Hey everyone, and welcome to our comprehensive guide for the Aeroo Pro. We're super excited to run you through our new drone and all the features that we've packed into it. Now, whether you're new to drones or have some experience, in this video we'll be running you through all the details of the Aeroo Pro, from activation to app settings and flying tips. So before we get into it, here's a breakdown of what we'll be covering today. First thing we're going to do is look at the drone and all its components. Next, we'll cover the controller. Then we'll go into the app and look at all the features in there. And lastly, we'll walk you through your first flight and some flying tips. One other thing to mention is that we sell two packages for the Aeroo Pro, the base package and the combo. Now the combo comes with some extra gear, such as a 4 battery charging station and an extra battery, so you'll get 2 in total. But no matter what package you have or plan on purchasing, you can still follow along to this video. The steps will be the same. So let's go ahead and look at the drone. So on the front here, we've got our gimbal protector, and behind that we're going to have our camera. So it's always important to remember to have your gimbal protector on when you're not flying, and that's going to protect the gimbal and the camera if you're in transit or from it moving around. So to take this off, we've got some instructions on the bottom here just to press and hold both sides. There's 2 tabs here, and if we press those in and lift out, it'll come out super easy. Now, when you get your drone, there's going to be a sticker on the camera as well. So let's just go ahead and take that off. Now I've got a sticker off. We can see our new 4K camera and the gimbal behind there. And the gimbal is what keeps our camera stabilized when it's in flight. So moving back to the top of the drone, we've got our battery here and the power button. So to turn the drone on, we just do a short press of the power button and then press it again. And if we hold it, the 4 lights will light up. And we can turn it off the same way, just by doing a short press and then holding the power button. Now with the battery, we can take the battery out by squeezing these 2 release tabs on the side here and pulling up. The battery will just pop out like that. Now when we want to put it back in, we just want to make sure that we're pushing down firmly on the top, and we hear a click like that. So when the battery's in properly, it'll be sitting nice and flush to the drone. So we've got our 4 arms here, and the propellers come already attached on the Aeroo Pro. An important thing to note is that each arm has a different letter, A or B, which is at the top of the props, as we can see here, and also on the arms as well, just there. So this indicates the specific propeller that needs to go on each arm. So if you are changing these over at any point, just double check that those propellers are going on the right arms. Now we flip over the drone here and take a look at the bottom. Here we've got a couple vision sensors, and this is what measures our altitude and will help us have a stable flight when we're either flying or landing. In the middle here, this is our payload release mechanism, and this is where we're going to attach our cables or line when we're using it for fishing or delivering items. And we can open and close that on the bottom of the drone by using this quick attach button down the bottom. And it works just like this. So if I just press the button here, we're going to see the release mechanism opening and closing. So this is super convenient and will only work when the drone is on. So just remember that if you're trying to open and close it. Lastly, here in the middle, we've got an LED light, and this will help you see the drone in low light conditions. Now, if we rotate our drone to the side, we're going to find our micro SD card slot. So if we open this up, this is where our memory card's going to go in, and that's where we're going to record all our photos and videos onto. So if you do have a micro SD card on you, this is a great time to chuck it in. I've just got a SanDisk one here with me now. We've just got a 64 gig one. You can use whichever size you'd like, but this is a good time to chuck some in if you've got one on hand, just so we don't forget later. So I'm just going to chuck one in there quickly. Press it in, and we're all good to go. Now if we move to the back of the drone on the other side, we'll find 2 more ports. We've got one labeled SIM, and we've got another port on this side. Now both of these are currently inactive, and these are actually areas for us to upgrade the drone in the future, so we won't worry about those for now. So now we've looked at the drone, let's quickly power it off. and let's have a look at the controller. So out of the box, the controller comes with the sticks already in place, and these are what we're going to use to control the drone's movements. For added portability, these are removable. So if I just twist out like this, and we can store them inside the remote. So in here, we've got two little spots. And if we do need to store them, we can just put them in there like that. Now on the top of the controller here, we have three buttons. We've got the return to home button, which as it explains, returns the drone back to where you took off from. Then we've got the on and off button. And on the right here, we've got FNS. And this is where we can switch our drone into different flight modes. So starting off with F, which stands for film. This basically just slows down the drone so you'll get some nice, slow cinematic shots. It's also a great place to start for beginners when you're getting used to the controls of the drone. Next, we have N, and this is for the normal flying mode, which is what we recommend for payload flight and most applications. And lastly, we've got S, which is sports mode, and this unlocks the top speed of the drone. It's also particularly useful if you're flying in high winds or want to do some fast-paced movements. Above these, we have some LED lights. If we have a quick press here on the power button, we'll see they're going to light up and show how much charge is left on the controller. Now moving to the front of the controller, on the left here we have the camera button, and that's used for taking photos during flight. Below this, we have our scroll wheel, and this is for tilting the gimbal, and that allows us to move the camera angle up and down. In the middle here, we have our antennas, which fold out like this. And these send the signals that go out to the drone, and we'll run through how to best position these at a later time. Over on the right side at the top here, we have our record button, which is indicated with the red dot. And this is obviously what's going to stop and start our video recordings when we're flying. Below this, we have our payload release button. So this button will open and close the release mechanism on the bottom of your drone. And this is what you're going to use when you're fishing or maybe delivering items with the drone. So you can release your payload by pressing this button on the controller or a button in the app as well. If we flip it to the side here, we'll see the USB-C port. And this is where we're going to charge our controller and also connect it to our phone or tablet. So the Aeroo Pro is compatible with both Android and Apple devices, and it comes with both USB-C and Lightning cables, depending on what you're going to be using. All right, so let's go ahead and mount our phone in the controller. First thing we're going to do is grab the right cable for our phone. So I've got a USB-C here, which will be working with my iPhone 15. And depending on the size of your phone, or if you've got a case, you might need to take it off just to make sure it'll fit when you're mounting it. So next thing we're going to do is pull out the bottom of the controller here, which is where we're going to mount our phone. Then we're going to make sure that the port on our phone is on the right side, which is the same side as where the port is on the controller. Then we're just going to put the phone in like that and pull out the tray. And our phone is just going to slide in really easily like that. And then all we're going to do is plug our phone in. There's a little TX and there's the phone side of our cables. So we'll plug the TX side into our controller and we'll plug the other side into our phone. And then just to tidy things up, we'll just tuck this cable in here. So now that we're all plugged in, let's power on our controller. And to do that, all we're going to do is hold the power button down for 2 seconds and all the lights are going to show up. And it'll show us how much battery we've got on the controller as well. And we're good to go. All right, now before we wrap things up with the drone and controller, let's just take a quick look at these batteries and how we charge everything up. So like I said at the beginning of the video, if you purchase the Pro combo, you will get the 4 battery charging station. And if you've just got the regular package, you'll get the single battery charger. With the combo, you do get 2 batteries, and with the normal package, you just get a single one. Now, if you're using the single battery charger, that'll connect up with the USB-C port on the side. So let's go ahead and plug that in with our cable. And to charge these batteries, we're just going to connect these prongs on the top of the charging station with these ones at the top of our battery. So let's go ahead and do that. Line those up and press in. And now we'll see all the LEDs are lighting up, and the amount of lights is going to indicate how much charge we have in the battery. If you've purchased the combo, you will get the 4 battery charging station. Now, it's important to note that with this charging station, it doesn't do all 4 batteries at once, but it does it in an intelligent way. So once one battery is fully charged, it'll move on to the next one until all 4 batteries are charged. And with the 4 battery charging station on the top here, we do have a USB-A output, and we're able to plug in our controller to this. So once all 4 batteries are charged, it will then move on to the remote and finish charging that as well without us having to do anything. Now, it's important to remember to always charge your batteries before the first flight, and importantly after each flight. So if you leave the battery low for extended periods, this can cause irreversible damage to the battery. So always remember to charge them up after each flight to get the most life out of them. So now that we've gone over all the equipment and how to charge everything up, we need to go and download the Aeroo app. So the Aeroo Fly app is compatible with both tablets and phones, so this will work whether you're on Android or Apple. You can download it from the App Store or from the Google Play Store, depending on your phone. And all we need to do is just type in Aeroo, and the app will come up. Once it comes up, all we need to do is hit download, and now we're ready for the next steps. So now that we've downloaded the Aeroo Fly app, let's turn on our drone and the controller so we're ready to activate once we open the app. Then we can set these to one side. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and open up the app. Now for your first time, you're going to be asked to create an account. So let's hit register now. And now all we need to do is put in our email address, a password, and then we'll get a verification code that's going to be sent to this email address. Once we've got that, we'll put it back in here, agree to the terms and conditions, and then hit register. So let's go ahead and do that now. So once this is done, you'll be prompted to activate the drone and the battery. So we'll go ahead and click activate. Now you may also be required to perform a software update at this stage if you're prompted. If you are, just follow the instructions on the screen and be patient, as sometimes they take around 30 minutes. We'll then hit enter device and it will load up our flight interface. So when we open up the app, we'll see the device status list. This will let us know the connection status of the drone and some pre-flight checks. But we'll X out of this for now, so we're getting the live feed of the camera. So right now we can see a white wall, the drone's on the table, nothing too exciting. But let's take a look around the app and familiarize ourselves with some of the features in here. So up the top left here, we can see Aeroo Pro, which is the device we're connected to. And next to that, we've got an indicator which will tell us what the current status of the drone is in. To the right, we'll see the letter N, which tells us which mode the drone's in. And this corresponds to the button on our controller. So right now we're in normal mode. If we change this to F, which is film mode, or sports mode, those letters will show up here instead. Next to that, we have our signal strength indicators for the drone, and also the live feed video. And we'll also see the number of satellites we're connected to up here as well. The drone needs to acquire a safe number of satellites before takeoff, and the more you're connected to, the more stable you will be during flight. And next to that, we'll see the drone's remaining battery percentage. Now in the top right here, we have the settings button. And if we tap into this, we'll have some extra settings we can look through. In the aircraft section, we can control settings related to the aircraft directly. We also have some waypoint settings which we'll run through in a future video. So below this, we have a range of calibration options which assist in keeping the drone stable during flight. The Aeroo Pro doesn't require calibration before every flight, but it will occasionally ask you to calibrate it in areas of high interference. As this is a new drone, we do recommend you calibrate it at least once before your first flight. It's super simple and the app will walk you through the process of how to do it. We'll run through this in our first flight. On a rare occasion, you might be prompted to perform a gyro or IMU calibration. The app will also walk you through how to perform this. So next we have our return to home altitude, and this is an important setting to understand. So this is how high your drone will ascend to before returning back to the takeoff point. Your drone is going to fly to that predetermined height, come back to you, then come straight down and land. So you want to make sure that your height is always set higher than the tallest obstacles around you. Now, by default, the return to home altitude is set to around 20 meters high. If, for example, you have trees around you that are 20 meters high, you would want to make sure your return to home altitude is set higher than that. But again, it's really important to set this depending on the area you're flying in. Below this, we have the AI search for landing pad. When in auto return to home, this will tilt the gimbal down and allow the drone to identify the landing pad for a precise landing. So next, we've got high wind mode. This will increase the maximum tilt of the drone to make it more wind resistant when you're flying. This will also decrease the battery life and the drone stability, so we recommend only using it in high winds or when you're an experienced flyer with the drone. Next, we've got height above the ground below the aircraft. We can use this to toggle the altitude to read relative to the ground below the drone instead of relative to the takeoff point. And at the bottom here, we have a setting to automatically release the payload if remote signal is lost. We recommend having this turned on if you're using the Aeroo Pro for drone fishing, as it increases the chances of a safe return. Next, we have our control settings. Now in joystick settings, we can adjust the sensitivity of the sticks. We tap back out here. We can also set our emergency stop mid-air to any time or failure only. If the drone identifies an issue in flight, pushing the sticks down like this will cause the drone to fall out of the sky. We recommend keeping the disconnected behavior to return to home and enabling payload stability mode. In FPV settings, we can choose between HD and smooth mode. HD will give a high quality but shorter range. For most devices, we recommend keeping anti-flicker off as well. Now in gimbal settings, this is where we can control the response of the gimbal scroll wheel. And in the advanced settings, we can allow upward rotation of the gimbal by 30 degrees. Now if we tap into the map settings, this is how we can customize the map and how it appears in our flight interface. Now if we tap into the battery settings, we're given some more information about each battery cell and the history of the battery. It's important to ensure that the smart low battery warnings is toggled on. Finally, in general, we can run through the walkthrough for the app interface, as well as the version and the details of our drone. Now if we tap out of the settings, on the top right here, this is our payload release or save drop location button. If we tap on this, we'll get a tip about a safety warning, and you'll also hear the release pin opening on the bottom of the drone. We can also open and close this button with the back route of our controller and the quick attach button on the bottom of the drone. Once we've activated that, we'll see that the graphic has lit up blue, showing us that it's currently in use. If we tap on that button again, we'll have the option to save a drop point. The drop point auto pilot feature is really cool, and this will allow you to save previous drop points and program the drone to automatically fly back to these points. This can be super useful if you're using the drone for drone fishing and want to be targeting the same drop location. Below this, we have our picture settings, and if we tap on this icon, we can adjust our picture settings for how we want our photos and videos to look. Below this, we have the camera mode, and we'll either have a photo or video graphic here, which is how we can switch between the photo and video modes in the app. For photo modes, we have single shot, continuous shooting, time photos, and panorama. And for video modes, we have ordinary shooting and portrait mode. Now this button below is how we take photos or start or stop our video. If you do see a small disc graphic here with a cross on it, this is letting you know that you don't have any memory in your drone at the moment, and now's a good time to chuck some in. Below this, we have the gimbal horizontal correction. It can be useful if you're capturing some nice aerial shots and need to fix the horizon angle so it's nice and straight. In the bottom right here, we have a more options button. And if we tap on that, we'll see the gallery button, which is the photo graphic. If we tap on that, we can find all the photos and videos that we've captured on the drone. This does require the drone to be connected and can take some time to load. So next to that here, we'll see some camera settings. Right now we're in auto mode, but if we press this here, we'll open up the pro settings. Now to the left, we've got some more detailed settings we can tap into. So if we click on one of these, we've got our video resolution settings. Next to that, we've got our ISO and shutter settings. And below that, we've also got our SD card, and that'll let us know how much storage we've still got left on there. Now we'll cover some more camera settings in a future tutorial so you can get the most out of your Aeroo Pro. Now to the left here, we've got our distance and height, which is relative to where we took off from, as well as the speed of the drone. Now on the bottom left here, we've got our orientation, which shows us which way the drone's facing. And if we tap on that, we'll bring up a map. And if we tap on that again, we'll bring up the full-size map. And this gives us a clear understanding of where the drone is in relation to us. And we can return by tapping to the live feed on the bottom left here. Above that, we've got our auto takeoff button or auto return to home when we're in flight. Above this, we've got our smart flight shooting modes, which we'll cover in a future video. And lastly, on the top left of the screen, we've got our return button, and if we hit that, that'll take us back to the home screen. So now I've got a good understanding of the drone, the controller, the app, and the settings inside. It's time to head out for our first flight. Alright guys, welcome to your first flight. Now for your first flight, we recommend going out to a nice big open park or field, away from obstacles or people. Now before we get outside, it's important to remember that we've got everything that we've run through at home yesterday. We've made a checklist and we'll put it in the description that you can print off or take with you just so you don't forget anything. Now this involves making sure your batteries are fully charged on our drone, remote and phone. You've got an SD card in there so we can record video and take photos. The gimbal protector has been removed. And we're in a safe takeoff area and fly zone. There's nothing worse than getting out there when you're going for a flight and your batteries are half charged or you forgot your SD card. So double check all those things before you're going out. So now that we've double checked everything, let's go ahead and power on our drone, the controller, and pair with our app. So let's go ahead and open up the app and enter the device. Now once we've opened up the app, we're going to let the drone sit there for about a minute while it acquires some satellites. And when it's done, up the top of the screen here, we'll see ready to fly. Now for our first flight, the drone will probably ask us for a compass calibration and sometimes in levels of high interference. We can follow the prompts on the screen and this will tell us how to do it. Now to calibrate the drone, what we're going to do is pick it up and rotate it on the spot 360 degrees horizontally 3 times, and then the same thing vertically 3 times. Once we've done this, the pop-up on our screen will go away. Now there's 2 ways we can take off with our drone, automatically and manually. So for automatically, on the left-hand side of the screen here, we have our auto takeoff button. If we press this, the drone's going to turn on, it's going to hover up about 2 meters, and then when we want to land, we can either press the same button or we can press the return to home button on the top of our remote here. So let's give that a go.
The home point has been updated. Please be mindful of the new return to home point. Return to home.
Easy as that. Now it's always good practice to let the drone come up and hover for a little bit, just so we can check that the drone's functioning properly before we fly off in any direction. So the other way we can take off is manually, and we can do that by holding the joysticks down and outwards. Once we've done that, the propellers are going to turn on and the drone's just going to idle there. When we are ready to take off, we can do that by pushing forward on the left joystick, and then the drone will hover up. When we're ready to land, all we need to do is hold the left joystick down towards us and keep holding it down till all the engines shut off. So let's give that a go. So there you go. They're the 2 ways we can take off and land, both automatically and manually. So now that we've covered the takeoff and landing, let's have a look at the rest of the controls with the joystick. So with the left joystick, if we push it forwards or backwards, that's going to control the drone going up and down. And if we push it either left or right, it's going to control the way the drone spins. So let's have a look at that now. So if I push the joystick forwards, it's going to go up. If I push it down, it's going to go back down. Now if I push the left joystick to the right, the drone's going to spin. Now when you are just starting out, if you ever get confused which way you're going, a good way to double check that is by looking at the live view on your phone, which will tell you which way the camera is facing. Now, if we look at the right joystick, if we push that forwards or backwards, that's going to control the drone going forward and backwards, obviously. And if we go left or right with the right joystick, that's going to move the drone left or right. So let's have a look at that. So if I push the right joystick forward, the drone's going to move forward towards the camera. If I pull it backwards towards me, it's going to come back. And now if I push left or right, the drone's going to move left or right. So that's all the controls. Now we've designed the Aeroo Pro to be super easy to fly, but when you are starting out, we do recommend easing yourself into it. So when you are starting out, we recommend putting it in film mode, which you can do by pressing twice on the top of the controller here. And when you're in film mode, the drone's going to move really slow, which is great for cinematic shots, but it will also help you just get a bit of a handle on the controls of the drone. The last thing you want to do is have the drone fly off super fast and crash into something because you're not used to the controls yet. So take your time, get comfortable, and then ease your way up. Now the Aeroo Pro is equipped with an auto return to home mode, where it'll fly back overhead and directly back to you at loss of signal, a low battery, or on command. Now, if the drone's very close to you, it'll simply fly back and land next to you. Or if the drone is a bit further away, it'll ascend to its set return home altitude, fly overhead, and then it's going to land directly next to you as well, like this. So by now, hopefully you've had a bit of a fly around with the drone and you've got comfortable with the controls. So now let's walk you through how to attach a payload to the Aeroo Pro. So the Aeroo Pro has a max safe payload of 1 kilogram. When you are starting out and just getting used to flying with payloads, we do recommend starting with something lighter and easing your way up. So today we'll be using a water bottle as our payload, which weighs about 500 grams. And we've got our payload attachment cable and our carabiner. It's important to ensure that your payload's always hanging 2 meters below the drone to minimize any swinging or stress that you're putting on the drone. All right, now so to attach our payload, we're going to flip the drone over so we've got the bottom of the drone here. In the middle here is where we're going to attach our line or cable. And now we ran through this earlier in the tutorial, but on the bottom right here of the drone, we've got our quick attach button. So if we press this, the release pin's going to open and close. So let's have a look at that. And now all we need to do is attach our cable in there. And then we're just going to press the quick attach button and close that off. And now our payload's all secure. Now it's important to note that when you are flying with a payload that you keep your cable or line out of the way of the drone and the propellers. When you are attaching anything to the drone, in particular fishing line, we do recommend tucking the line under the foot of the drone to keep it out of the way. It's also good practice to take note of the wind direction, so when we do take off, we know which way the line or cable will be blowing. Now before we take off, let's make sure our drone's in normal mode, as this is what we recommend when you're flying with any payload attached. Alright, so now let's take off and gradually hover the drone up so our payload gets off the ground. And it's important to do this gradually so we minimize any stress or jerking on the drone. It's also good practice that when we do get up, let's hover the drone over the payload so when we do lift up, there's even less stress on the drone. Now that we're in the air, let's practice some gradual movements with the joysticks and just get used to that feeling of flying with a payload. Now the Aeroo Pro has payload stability on by default, and this is going to control the acceleration and deceleration to minimize swinging. The drone's going to take longer to stop in this mode, but it's going to maximize its stability. So we always want to gradually accelerate and decelerate when we're flying with a payload, and this is going to keep it as stable as possible. Now if we were to fly off really fast and stop suddenly, you'll see we'll get a lot of swinging motion with our payload. This is ultimately going to put more stress on your drone and drain the battery faster. So now that we've had a bit of a fly around with the payload, let's learn how to drop it. Now dropping the payload's super easy. All we need to do is press the payload release button on the front of our controller here. And that's it. Now when we are flying with a payload, it's important that we drop it before we land. That way we can avoid getting anything tangled up and caught in the propellers. So that's a wrap for our first flight, guys. We hope you've learnt lots and you're feeling a lot more comfortable with the controls of your new Aeroo Pro. Now if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment on the video. We're happy to help in any way that we can. We've got a whole bunch of new content coming out, so if you are looking forward to some more videos, make sure you hit subscribe and we'll see you next time. Cheers.